The time has finally come to review something perfect for the idea of this channel. I wanted to review the things I love from the perspective of someone from an entirely different generation. When Star Fox 64 was released, I was 8 years away from even being born. Most other reviews you'll see for this game will be from the perspective of someone who grew up on this franchise, but for me, I have no experience. So this review isn't based entirely on what's been changed in the 2026 remake, but more so, what does Star Fox look like from the perspective of someone who grew up in an entirely different generation of video games? Star Fox to me has always been Fox, Falco, and Wolf in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, and hearing the constant banter about how Nintendo was wasting the opportunity to not make a new Star Fox with the massive Nintendo Switch install base. I grew up on a Wii and a Wii U, and wasn't really a massive gamer until the Nintendo Switch, so there wasn't a lot of access to Star Fox games. I also never had that drive even when they came to the Nintendo Switch Online expansion passes. But when whispers of a new Star Fox game started this spring, my interest in the franchise was certainly piqued. Even though I didn't like the Super Mario Galaxy movie all that much, Star Fox was far and away the best part. So when Star Fox was officially announced as the third remake of the N64 game, with very different character designs, unlike a good portion of the internet, I wasn't turned away. I never played Star Fox 64. I thought the new game looked gorgeous, and I was even a fan of the character redesigns because I had no personal connection to them. What I was trepidatious about was hearing about the game's price, runtime, and overall replay value. So with this long preamble out of the way, how does Star Fox hold up for someone fresh into the series? It's funny because Star Fox is almost contradicting itself at all times. It wants to be this grand, sweeping space opera, but it's also such a small package. But the funniest part about it is that this formula totally works. It's engaging and epic, but can also be beaten in less than an hour. So what makes this formula work? Well, it's the world, presentation, and gameplay that makes Star Fox something that can hold up after all of these years. The game follows a group of animal mercenaries under the team name of Star Fox. Fox McCloud is their cocky leader, Falco Lombardi is their brash ace pilot, Slippy Toad is the lovable but clumsy team technician, and rounding out the squadron is Peppy Hare, the veteran pilot who looks after the whole team. This remake adds new cinematics in between levels, which really makes the team and their dynamics shine. There are dozens of these cutscenes, which mimic what happens in the different levels, and they are always fun to watch, even on repeat viewings. You're watching a full narrative unfold as your team preps for their next mission. Seeing Fox prop up the success of his buddy Slippy, or seeing the ways Fox and Falco will butt heads is always a treat. It's all thanks to some really clever writing and voice work, and the level of detail and fidelity Velan Studios managed to create. The character models are hyper detailed, with different textures for each part of their clothing or the team's ship. It's rare for a Nintendo game to have this much attention to detail and graphical horsepower. It really feels like the first true next-generation game for the Nintendo Switch 2. Velan's engine for this game is very impressive, bringing 60 FPS for all in-engine combat, topped off with all the visual polish you could want. Every level is highly detailed, whether it's the water effects on Corneria's Ocean or the molten waves of Solar. And any level where the Arwing is in space is an absolute highlight. You dodge and weave between different adrift debris, with a gorgeous multicolored background as the music just rips it up. The word grand to me isn't solidified from the visuals or the higher budget feel from the game, but its epic orchestral soundtrack. This is the stuff of legend. If you take nothing else from this review, I implore you to listen to this soundtrack. The euphoric highs of boosting through the onslaught in Area 6, or the haunting melody from the destroyed planet Zone S, make the game feel like an event. Then, a lot of these levels look and feel distinct from each other. On my first campaign runs, every time I would play a level for the first time, I had a massive grin on my face, seeing how the new area would look and play. It's this tightly designed package built to give you an hour of cinematic highs. Though I would put a small asterisk on that statement. Out of the 16 levels, there are 4 that I just don't really enjoy. 4 doesn't sound like a lot, but 1/4 does. Now these levels aren't bad per se, but my disdain for them comes from a combination of their placement, and some of the game's other flaws. The way the game is structured is through a star map, where you plan your next destination based on level requirements and circumstances. Your campaign always starts on Corneria and ends on a version of Venom. So while the map gives you numerous options at its center, it always has levels that will be replayed numerous times. A level like Corneria is always fun. It's beautiful with constant environment changes and a great score. But then, Bolsey features a pretty boring mission with some frustrating action and is played on most routes throughout the game. Most of the levels are on rails, similar to arcade machine shooters that function like roller coasters. These are almost always the best levels of the game. Then other levels allow you to control the R-Wing in all range mode, where you can fly freely around in dogfights. These come with some highlights and drawbacks. Flying around freely in dogfights can be a lot of fun, with the freedom of movement and sense of pride when shooting down dozens of enemy fighters. But some of the all-range levels pit you and your squadron against Starwolf, and these levels can be pretty frustrating. Your allies will call for your help in already hectic battles, and will sometimes give the player ample time to be saved, and other times be destroyed immediately after calling out. Then having singular targets can lead to some frustrating slowdown in a game that's all non-stop action otherwise. One of these levels is pretty difficult. It's then followed up by a really boring and frustrating boss fight, and on top of that, it's a level that's played through most campaign runs. The dogfighting feels great in the online mode, especially in the newly designed levels built for multiplayer. They give you much more room to breathe, and the power-ups lead to some really fun battles. It isn't super in-depth, but it's a fun distraction in between campaign runs. One of the reasons you want to keep coming back for campaign runs is the differences they can offer. On your path to Venom, you can only play through 5 optional levels, so to see them all, you'd have to play at least 3 campaigns. On top of that, you also get different interactions based on what paths you take in general. For example, if you manage to warp to Katina, you can save the pilot Bill. Then if you select Sector X after saving Bill, he will help you out with the level. However, if you go to Sector X without stopping on Katina, Bill won't show up at all. It sounds like some pretty basic storytelling, but in the moment, it feels really special. It's impressive to think that an N64 game managed to feature these cool branching narratives. It also helps the world feel fleshed out and alive. And even writing this now, I have that curiosity to think, I wonder if Bill would help me on Solar if I chose that over Sector X. I've completed over 6 campaigns, and I could see myself going back for another 1 or 2 in the coming weeks just to see what other surprises await. With that said, I do wish these repeat campaigns offered a little more when it comes to game value. Replaying levels allows you to see different variations of the story and the ability to reach a new high score, and that's about it. Getting the high scores unlocks medals, which nets some minor banner upgrades for multiplayer, and then unlocks harder versions of the level in both expert difficulty and in challenge mode. But I just don't feel that draw to keep retrying levels just to get 100% on the game. I would have loved some R-Wing customization, and some small collectibles for completing the game's optional challenges, rather than just harder versions of levels I've already played. I understand that the fun of the game is chasing those high scores, but for me, I do wish there was a little more incentive to complete the game over and over again. So with that said, I do think that $49.99 is a little steep. I think the budget and quality on display in Star Fox makes up for that higher price, but if you aren't a score chaser and only want to see each level once, then there's only a few hours of content on here for you. I put around 8 hours in the game, and some people might not even find half of that playtime. But to see what Velan Studios has done with the game does make me both a Star Fox fan and excited to see what the future of the franchise could look like under their stewardship. While it might not be the most bang for your buck, Star Fox is still wildly entertaining and gorgeously realized.